Turn towards a gentleman from Texas who has rapidly become a leader on this issue as well. Congressman Randy Weber. Randy, if you'd share with us some of your thoughts about marriage and its impact as we celebrate National Marriage Week. Thank you.
Absolutely, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank my colleague Tim Muleskamp for the opportunity to speak out today in support of marriage and also what I'm going to call unmarriage. And we'll talk about that more on that later. You know, Mr. Speaker, children are the only thing God can use to make adults. So we'd better give him a ready supply. And I would submit to those of us who are following this and listening that marriage has been the strong foundation of our culture and our society. Our government recognizes marriage because of the benefits it extends to our society. A healthy marriage creates stability. It creates security, Mr. Speaker. A healthy marriage ensures a committed relationship with a mom and a dad to raise, to teach, to instill values in those children. A change in attitude toward marriage over the past several decades has been slowly corrupting our marriage culture. But it is important that we continue to recognize the important institution that is marriage and allow the conversation on its public policy interest to continue in the states. This past week, sadly, Eric Holder, the Attorney General, has once again thwarted the Constitution, thwarted the separation of powers, and thwarted the popular will of the people when he announced that the Department of Justice, and I use the word loosely, would extend recognition of same-sex marriages nationwide, including my beloved Texas, that has adopted a constitutional amendment to define marriage as a union between one man and one woman for our specific public policy interests. We adopted that in Texas by over 76% of the vote in 2005. Last summer, as we know, Congressman, you've already referred to it, the Supreme Court making yet another mistake. The federal definition of marriage and the Defense of Marriage Act, or DOMA, was ruled unconstitutional in the United States versus Windsor case. And as a result of the vagueness contained in that decision, federal agencies began developing interagency guidance that surpasses the limits set by our very own Constitution, set by the Supreme Court, set by Congress. While some of those agencies are referring to state law, Mr. Speaker, in determining a couple's marital status based on where the couple resides, called the state of domicile, other federal agencies are using the state of celebration, or where a couple is married, when they enforce federal laws. This latter practice is unconstitutional. Agencies do not have the authority to create law, and therefore agencies which are following, quote, the state of celebration, end quote, in determining the recognition of marriage, they undercut state laws and inherently influence the debate within the borders of those states. That's why I have introduced the State Marriage Defense Act. This act solves that problem. It provides that a marriage will not be recognized by the federal government if it is not recognized by the state in which the person lives, aka the state of domicile. Every American's marital status in the eyes of the federal government would be the same as in the eyes of the state where he or she lives. That would simplify the law, do away with the confusion on the part of agencies, at least in that one regard. So, again, I have introduced the State Marriage and Defense Act of 2014, which simply provides that a relationship will not be recognized as a marriage by the federal government if it is not recognized by the state in which that person lives. That is it in a nutshell. My bill, the State Marriage Defense Act of 2014, is a states' rights bill. We in Texas don't want other states telling us, or the federal government for that matter, telling us how we should live, and we don't intend to tell them how they should live. And now about what I call unmarriage. Federal government Leave marriage alone and leave it to the individuals who live in, contribute to, and build families at the local level. Federal government, divorce yourselves from this notion of dictating to the states. That needs to be an unmarriage. I've been married to the prettiest gal this side of the Atlantic, Tim, for 37 years, and she's my girlfriend of 39 years. I understand what marriage is a commitment, and it is a tremendous institution, and it undergirds our very society. I'm glad to participate in this marriage week and to stand up and fight for states' rights. I'm Randy Weber, and there you have it.
Thank you, Congressman Weber. I had one follow-up question. If we could try to determine in your mind exactly where do you think our Attorney General and the administration believes they have the authority to determine exactly what a marriage is. Can you explain that to me, Congressman?
I wish I could, Tim. Sadly, I think they've gone around the Constitution, gone around the Supreme Court, gone around the Congress. I would say we have a constitutional crisis on our hands, because here is an administration that's out of control, an attorney general that's out of control, and sadly for the executive branch, for someone who taught constitutional law, that's a scary notion to me, because I can just assure you that I've read the Constitution many times over, and I don't have a clue where they're getting the authority, other than people have been silent and not stood up against that kind of what I would call wannabe kingship. And so I hope that enough people stand up and say enough is enough, get back to the basics, back to the Constitution, and as I said, unmarry this notion that the federal government's got to be in our everyday lives.
Congressman, thank you for your leadership. I appreciate your efforts on the State Marriage Defense Act, and I am